I'm Jon Bond. Welcome to Move Yourself Happy. Made for fitness enthusiasts who want to make their passion their profession. Are you unhappy in your present job? Are you passionate about health and fitness? Do you want to release your true potential? If the answer is yes, this podcast is for you. I will be teaching you the specific knowledge that every trainer and coach needs to be successful. So listen closely as I share my expertise with you. So just like me, you can love what you do. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, John. It's lovely to be with you, mate, in this time. And yeah, I'm looking forward to getting stuck in and having a chat.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, always love a good chat. You're very much like myself there, I think, aren't you?
Ah, mate, sometimes it's hard to shut me up. So you might have to tell me to put a pin in it.
That's all right. That's all right. That's the whole point. It's like for some people you need a bit of truth serum, don't you? But for people like you and me, it just pours out, doesn't it?
Sometimes my wife tells me I tell people too much. She's like, "Look, don't say that. Whatever you do, don't talk about this." So yeah, so I might need to
O-
just watch how honest I am.
oversharing. That's a great quality to have when you're on a podcast, though.
Well, I suppose so. Not so much when you're a fitness instructor and you've got 20 people in front of you and you're sharing about intimate details of the night before.
Yeah, yeah, not so good, not so good. All right. Well, look, let's kick off. I was thinking about. I'm sure people listening. I know quite a bit about you, but I'd like to know more. But people listening, I'm sure would like to know who are you, what do you do?
Cool. Yeah, so my name's Ryan French, a health and fitness professional by trade. But I like to look at myself as a health and wellbeing coach. I've been in the industry for about 16 years. And I've coached people from right at the start of their journey right through to people who are super fit. I've boxed professionally, and I ride motocross for fun now with my son. And yeah, I've got two kids and a wife, and yeah, just trying to help spread the message of consistency and fitness, and help people to. I knew that was going to happen. I put my phone on aeroplane mode, and my watch rang.
Does he not automatically do the watch as well?
No, it doesn't. I thought it did, but it obviously
No,
doesn't. But
that's
anyway,
annoying, isn't it? They
anyway.
need to start talking to each other, don't
Yeah, exactly.
they?
Yeah, so I work in the health and fitness space and just try and just encourage and help people to live healthier, more fulfilling lives.
Brilliant. And what inspired you to get into that in the first place?
That's a great question. My time in the army, actually. So I always battled because I started boxing when I was really young. So I started boxing. I was about first stepped in the gym when I was about 8, but took it up properly when I was about 11. And so fitness from a sport point of view was always a huge part of my life. But if I wasn't training to fight, I would put weight on because my diet was terrible. Well, not terrible, but I would just eat too much. And I always use the excuse, I'm a growing lad. You got to stop using that excuse when you're 35, right? So,
You're still a growing lad. You're just not growing the way you want to be growing.
yeah, exactly.
That's me anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so why I got into fitness and what actually got me into interested in fitness was my time in the army. So I wasn't boxing during my little stint in the army that I had, but I did find my love for the gym and I started lifting weights, and I packed a little bit of size on in terms of like muscle, but also as well I did pack on some fat because I was eating my calorie surplus was too high.
Mm.
Instead of it being 5 to 10% of my overall calorie allowance, it was a lot higher. It was a lot higher because I was like, oh, I can eat what I want now because I'm lifting weights. So although I
Yeah,
did pack on some size, but I also did pack
dirty
on some fat.
bulk.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, so that's how I found the gym really, like lifting weights and that. And then when I got out, when I actually got kicked out of the army for failing a drug test. And I'm sure we might touch on that a bit. But that's when I got out. That's when I was 2021. I then yeah, I studied to become a personal trainer because I found my love for the gym, and I thought that was the avenue that I went down. I would go down, and actually that was a few different circumstances. I actually started to just take responsibility for my life, and
Mm.
actually started to own up to, well, the current my state where I was at that point as a 21-year-old was down to me. It wasn't where I grew up. It wasn't the fact that I'm from a council estate in Southeast London. It wasn't the fact that my dad was in and out of my life. It wasn't the fact that I started using drugs at a young age. All this stuff like that, I tried to blame the consequences of my life on. I just took responsibility for it. And by me taking responsibility for it and actually looking at where I had gone wrong, that was the catalyst for change for me and actually helped me to just move forward in my life. And yeah, and then I went to university, studied sport and exercise science, and I got a first class honours degree in sport and exercise science.
Amazing.
And yeah, and all this is great. Like it's great, but it all started with me taking responsibility for my life and actually looking for the areas where I needed to improve.
Brilliant. Taking responsibility. That's empowering, isn't it? I can already see the thumbnail for this the podcast. Taking responsibility. Um, so you sort of you touched on the getting kicked out of the army for the drug taking, and you
Yeah,
sort of suggested that you're quite happy to perhaps talk about that a bit more detail. Was that recreational
yeah,
drugs?
yeah, cocaine. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, I started, I first smoked a joint when I was probably about 11 or 12. And but I used to, but the beauty of me finding boxing at a young age, I'm a very obsessive man, right? I've got the ability to get obsessed about anything. Those characteristics were evident from a young age. So when I found boxing, what I loved about boxing is that I was able to step in to be a character that was no longer getting bullied, because the first secondary school I went to when I was um, at secondary school age at year seven is I got bullied. Or I say I got bullied. I look at it a bit differently now. All it was is like kids being kids, right?
Mm.
And if I'm being really honest, it was probably I wasn't one of the in crowd. So,
Mm.
the popular kids. Like I was on the periphery of that. Whereas in primary school, I was one of the popular kids, and then when I got to secondary school, I was on the periphery of it. And every time they might have like not made fun of me, but just made a suggestion about me or whatever that wasn't as like wasn't I wasn't that suggested I wasn't their friend. I didn't like it. And I went to a secondary school that my brother didn't go to because I wanted to be different. So my older brother went to a different secondary school. And I also looked at the other kids who had their brother with them and I felt left out. So if I'm being really honest, I say I got bullied. All it was is I wasn't part of the in crowd and I wasn't with my brother. So yeah, I left that school just before the end of year seven. I went to the same school as my brother. But then when I got there, I made a decision to not to if I'm if I'm being completely honest, I made a decision that I wanted to be part of the popular crowd. And I started making decisions that was not favorable to education and more
Right.
favorable to
Oh, okay.
socialization.
Right.
Um,
To be with a popular crowd, you felt like you had to do certain things.
Yeah, and it was around that time that I took up boxing properly. So then the first time I had a fight at that school was about a month after joining towards the end of the school year in year seven. And this was at the time, this was one of the kids that was looked at as one of the, like when you're that age, it's all about who's harder than who and
Yeah.
all like playground stuff really. But this
So
guy
this
had
wasn't a
done something.
sanctioned fight. This is a fight
No,
out
this is a fight in the
to
playground.
fist bare knuckles.
And that's really this was me stepping into a new persona at that point in my life. And yeah, I'd been to the gym a few times boxing, but I couldn't really box as such at that point, but I knew how to throw a punch, and this kid put it on me to fight, so I went and had a fight with him and I beat him. And then that really was the catalyst for my secondary school experience at this new school, Kemnal Technology College in Sidcup. And and to be honest, I love school. I love school for the wrong reasons. I love school because I go to school to socialise. I'd have a laugh, and I wouldn't really concentrate on my studies because, like, I'd undiagnosed dyslexia. I got diagnosed with dyslexia about 6 years ago. So I went for university not knowing I had dyslexia.
Mm.
I just knew that it took me longer to read and to interpret information. So yeah, so that was really like um the that me stepping into this new persona of someone who doesn't let people walk all over them. And if you're going to challenge me on something, I'm going to step up. And what I'm really grateful about is I'm no longer that guy. Don't get me wrong. Like I've still, if I get the ump, I've got the ability to still, to still like lose it,
Mm.
like most people. But I don't feel under any pressure anymore to be that person. Whereas for a large part of my youth, that was the person I identified with, and that's who I needed you to believe I was.
Mm.
So it was nice when I was 21 to be able to shed that part of my personality. Don't get me wrong, like I said, like it's still a part of my personality, but I don't like it when I step into that part of my personality anymore.
No, but do you not find so like a lot of what you're saying is resonating with big time, by the way. Um, I won't go into the detail of my childhood at school, but a lot of similarities. Um,
Mhm.
didn't do very well at school at all. But I found that I would get into fights because really, upon reflection, looking back, I was trying to prove something, and
Yeah,
it was a lack of self-confidence. And the whole time I'm in a good place as far as my self-confidence and self-esteem goes, I think I'll always have the ability to opt out of any of that stuff. So like even now, like I'm the same as you. If a situation presented itself and the environment was as it, I was gonna say if the environment was right. I don't, that
yeah,
seems like the wrong choice of words, doesn't it? But I might find myself in an altercation that I probably shouldn't be in, but I think I would have to be mentally feeling a little bit insecure that day, that week, whatever it may be, for that to happen. But the whole time I'm feeling good about myself, I'd probably be able to just walk away. Um, does that any of that resonate with you?
100%. Like for me, the way that I describe it now is so I've got the ability to get resentful about absolutely anything, yeah. And if I hold on to those resentments, they then feed into other areas of my life. So just for as an example, like I'd say the road is probably the most unspiritual place for me. So when I'm driving, I mean, it's got so much better. Like before I started to take responsibility for my life when I was 21, I would regularly get into like altercations with people when I was driving. So if someone cut me up or whatever, I would wait for an opportunity at a set of traffic lights and I'd get out of the car and like confront the person who just cut. It could just be simple as cutting me up. I'd be like selective in my memory. I wouldn't for one second think of myself as a hypocrite because I might have done it just like 5 minutes before. Do you know what I mean? Like I had the ability to just flip. So, but I've not done that for the last, like, I'm 36 now. So 15 years, I've not done that.
Mm.
So, but don't get me wrong. Like if someone cuts me up, I can't control my first thought. My first thought might be one that isn't very nice. And sometimes that thought does translate into words. But I'm no longer hanging out the window and it doesn't ruin my whole day. So what I might do is I might have a moment where I get a resentful thought at this person and I might then call them something under my breath. But then I do try it that my next because I can't choose my first thought, but I can choose my second thought. Sometimes I can't choose my second thought, but I can choose my third thought. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
So I often use I appreciate this is can be quite controversial because like some people don't have faith and they don't pray and that's fine. But for me, like one of the main things in my life is prayer and meditation. So when those instances happen where I have a moment where it looks like it could be like seeing red as just to try and make it as clear a picture as possible. Yeah. So if an instance happens where I might see red, if I have the presence of mind to take a breath and then offer a prayer for that person who has annoyed me, it just gives me enough space between thought and action so I don't actually follow through. Do you know what I mean?
I do know exactly what you mean. Yeah. So I was brought up Catholic, and
Ah, right.
I don't want to say I lost my faith because that sounds like something big happened, and I was like, right,
Yeah,
that's it, me and God, we're
yeah.
done. But just over the years, over time, I just kind of um, didn't follow it for whatever reason, and and I don't call myself an atheist. I'm probably agnostic, where I'm like, whatever. But
Yeah.
the one thing I do value is the Christian ethos and everything that I was brought up to believe. And I totally like, for me, that what you just said there, it's just a nice way to be as a person, isn't it? Because
Mm,
you never know what is going on behind the scenes, do you? When someone's talking to you in a certain way, acting a certain way, you just don't know what's going on behind the scenes. So if you can control that second thought, as you said, and then just spare a little time to go, well, hold on, this person could be suffering here. Me doing it, it doesn't contribute to the world being a better place by me, having to go back. So it's easier to do that on some days than it is on others. But for me, that is part of the Christian ethos, and I'm a big believer in that. And I'm probably not just the Christian ethos. Just imagine most religions go with that. So no, I think it's good.
yeah. Yeah, I'd say that's definitely. I think it's probably common in most denominations, right? That's why I think, although I'm not a religious person, I don't subscribe to any faith, but I definitely do believe that there's something more powerful than me. That wants me to be happy and wants me to place myself in a position to be of service to others. That is the main thing in my life today, is like placing myself in a position to be of service to others. And the reason why I do that is because it makes me feel good, if I'm being completely honest.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, oh God, yeah. People say that all the time, don't they? Like, oh, well, actually, if you break down when someone's trying to help somebody else, they are still doing it for selfish reasons. And you're like, that's a cynical thing to say, isn't it? Yeah, all right, it makes you feel good, and you're like, yeah, you're getting some benefit from it. But I mean, that's that. If everybody tries to help each other and get through the world like that, it's gonna be a nicer place. So
Mm.
whether there is some self-interest because you get some warm feeling inside from it, it's like, well, I think you're allowed to think like that, aren't you? I think that's okay. That's acceptable.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I think the God that I believe in, I believe that my God, my higher power, whatever you want to call it, has got a sense of humor. Because this he, she, it, whatever it is, knows that the only way I'm going to do something for someone else is if I get something in return. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what I get in return is a beautiful life. And don't get me wrong, life happens and challenges happen. And but I like what you're saying. Like if I'm in a state of mind that's free of resentment and one that's looking for opportunities to be of service to others, when those challenges do occur in life, I'm in a much better state to deal with them as opposed to acting like a headless chicken.
Mhm.
Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
On this journey then of yours to become, so really sort of starts around the age of 21, this journey to
Yeah.
becoming, I suppose, just wanting to be a better person, or positive contribution to society, going on to have family, etc. What part would you say exercise has played in that?
Yeah, that's nice way to get us back on topic, John. Appreciate that.
I, we could have done an hour talking about religion, couldn't we?
Yeah.
And road rage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I suppose my the fitness in there, it's been, although I've been I've worked in the health and fitness space for 15, 16 years. Um, my personal relationship with exercise has only been consistent without the need to box, which I'll touch on in a second. So so I stopped boxing in 2017. That was my last fight due to an injury. But my consistent relationship with fitness has only been since 2022. Like pre 2022, it was very much I'm going to use the word fat, yeah, but I'm describing myself as fat, all right, just to make it clear. Like um in my mind, I've got a fat side of my wardrobe and a skinny side of my wardrobe. And I was normally in my slim clothes when I was boxing, and 9 times out of 10 I was in my fat clothes when I wasn't boxing. Yeah, so it was very much yo-yo dieting. That was the story of my life, like ever since really the age of 16, even when I was in the army. So where fitness fits in now is consistent health and fitness habits. And I like to look at it like I use the 80-20 rule whenever I work with my clients. Even when I wasn't living this life myself, I was very much a do as I say, not as I do fitness coach before, like pre 2022. So I would use the 80-20 rule with my clients, but wouldn't live it myself. And yeah, I'm not saying you can't be out of shape and be an effective personal trainer. I mean, I was getting results for my clients when I was out of shape, but I do think it holds more weight if you're in shape yourself. It definitely adds more value to the information you're trying to give to your client if you're actually living that as well. So what I like to live by is 80-20 rule. So 80% of the time stick to your plan, and 20% of the time let yourself have a bit of sway from that plan, because that's, for me, that's like a bridge to normal living, because I think extremes in any direction don't help. So there's different fitness influencers out there at the moment that will be, oh, you need to be completely no processed foods, and that's great. I agree. Like, we shouldn't have any processed foods in our diet, but I like processed foods and what some people call bad foods.
Mm.
I enjoy them. So if I had a diet that didn't include any of them, yeah, I might stick to it for 6 months. But I know I would start eating them again. And like I said, I'm an obsessive man. I've got the ability to get addicted to anything, including sugar. Do you know what I mean? So if I
Yeah.
if I completely got it out of my diet completely, it would slowly start dripping in, and I would be like eating loads of it again. So I like to make sure I've got moderation in my diet. And that's, I suppose, that's like, we're talking about fitness here. And when it comes to training, for a long time it would be running and boxing. That's all I did, not any strength training. Now strength training makes up most of my program. So I'll do one cardio session per week and 4 or 5 weight training sessions. And there'll be a combination of push, pull, squat movement patterns that I tend to do in my training program.
Mm.
And I'm in better shape now than I was when I was boxing, because when I was boxing I was skinny, trying to make a
So
really light weight
what weight did you fight at when you boxed?
around welter and super welterweight. So around like the 10, just under 11 stone
So I
mark.
know those guys, they're like endurance athletes where they're scared to death, aren't they, of putting on any weight because
Yeah,
of going up into the next weight
yeah,
category.
exactly.
So
Yeah.
it's quite common, isn't it? I remember years ago I got it randomly. I had a job working for Chris Eubank.
Oh
Just
wow.
it sounds better than what it is, but he had this TV show called At Home with the Eubanks.
Oh yeah, I watched it.
Did
Yeah,
you
I
watch
remember
it?
it.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, yeah.
he would ring my mate up, who I was kind of like, we were like this little duo, and we would go around and we would just get the house ready for when the TV crew came, so like clean his juggernauts and stuff. And at the time, I was really into boxing, so I was like, this is great. You know, I'm going to Chris Eubank's house and getting to interact with him. And I used to try and ask him questions all the time. He wasn't that much of a talker, actually. He comes across on TV like he is, but face to face when the cameras are off, he wasn't very receptive. But I remember asking him about, uh, I was doing some weights at the time, and I said, "Oh, have you got any tips for what I should be doing in the weight room?" And he told me don't do any. He said you shouldn't be doing any weights; it will slow you down. And so that's just that old school. I mean, he was he a middleweight, wasn't he? But that old school, like those guys, it took a while, didn't it, to phase out the idea that weights slow you down. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's very old school. I mean, because he started off as a middleweight and then ended his career as a super middleweight. Um, yeah, so that's exactly what my coach said to me as a 13-year-old kid. He said, don't do weights. You should never do weights as a boxer. So what, I'm 36 now, so what's that, 23 years ago? Yeah, so
hmm.
I mean, things have come on massively. Like, strength and conditioning education in boxing has got much better. There are many more boxers like doing deadlifts and like functional movement patterns with weights now, which is great.
Hmm.
Sorry if you can, is that pinging for you?
I didn't hear it.
Ah, great. Sorry, it's once again my watch is, all the messages are coming through my watch.
But it's telling you to move.
Yeah,
You sat down too
exactly.
long, Ryan. Get up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that you're bang on. Like, that messaging in boxing is very old school. But yeah, I mean, fortunately, like, old practices in boxing, because I mean, like some of the stuff that I used to do to make weight is so dangerous. Like I would put black bags on and go and sit in a sauna for an
Oh
hour.
yeah, yeah. Because the idea was because that's fine for making weight, 2 or 3 days out of your weigh-in. Because well, I say it's fine. Actually, I think there's been some deaths in college wrestling when
Mm,
they've done that in America.
yeah.
But
Mm,
but as in, like, it serves a purpose for that. But where that when that then sort of translated to the grassroots level,
mm.
trainers and athletes were thinking that that's how they do it for long-term weight loss as well, and that if you do stuff in sweatsuits you're burning fat, but actually all you're doing is getting water out your system. As soon as you have a
Yeah.
nice bottle of water, like, what's that, that's 700 mils. As soon as you have 700 mils, that's the best part of a kilo back on, isn't it?
Yeah, and what people don't realize, but once again, the education is much better now. So I'm not for 1 second slating any of the coaches that I had in the past because they were great. They dedicated their time, sacrificed family time. Because honestly, like these boxing gyms, the coaches, they're the unsung
Oh,
heroes.
they really are,
Of
aren't
the,
they?
oh, they really are. Yeah, like it's really like it is a lifestyle. So I just want to make it clear, like I'm definitely not making any judgment towards those
No,
guys
no,
at that
you won't come
time.
across like that at all, Ryan.
So,
No,
but
that's
one of
cool.
the biggest things that happens when you dehydrate yourself to the levels that some people still do, by the way, is your the cerebral fluid around the brain is reduced. So what happens when you take a punch? There's less cushioning around the brain, so it
Mm.
actually creates more of a brain injury, or more of a significant brain injury when you're dehydrated. That's why, like the likes of the IBF are a sanctioning body in professional boxing. They have rehydration clauses. So, and how that works is once they weigh in. So normally on a championship fight, they weigh in a day before. It means they won't be able to put on over a certain amount of weight because if they do, that would suggest that they were too dehydrated.
Yeah,
So
of
they have
course. Yeah.
rehydration clauses in the contract to ensure that
Oh,
people
that's
are not
good.
dehydrating themselves too much. Which so all these things are massive step forwards and leaps forwards, but unfortunately they come at a cost, right? Because normally they do it after someone got injured. So
Yeah.
like you know, like I said, Gerald McLennan, and I'm really annoyed with myself that I can't remember the one that Chris Eubank boxed.
Ben, not Ben.
Not Ben, no,
Ben
Chris Eubank boxing.
Watson.
No, yeah, Watson. Yeah, Michael Watson. Yeah. Yeah. So after those tragedies, that's when the boxing world started. But of course, you've got the most recent one with Nick ah, Bang Bang, his nickname. Nick, he's from Brighton.
I
So
can't. I
hopefully someone
can't.
listening will remember. But
No,
yeah, his name's Nick. I'm
that's
friends with him on
our neck of the
Facebook.
woods, and I can't remember either.
Yeah, but he boxed and he got injured, like which is like a freak thing through Chris Eubank Jr. for fighting Chris Eubank Jr. That's when he had
mm,
his injury. But luckily, like he's back around, like he's training again, but obviously not fighting. But
no.
his health is improving, and which is really good to see. But these things happen, and then by these things happening, it forces like the sanctioning bodies and the people in charge of the safety of the sport to actually look at how we can continue to improve it and make sure people are safe.
Yeah, but I mean, take that stuff away. Boxing is such a wonderful way to channel your energy. Like for me, as a yeah a troubled young lad, um,
Mm.
giving you that self confidence of knowing because once you learn how to box, you actually you lose interest in fighting, don't you? Out of boxing because you're like, what have I got to prove? I do that 2, 3 times a week at the club. I don't need to,
Yeah,
you
it
know.
was different for me.
Oh, you used it as you
It
went
was
right. I now
it was
know what to
different.
do.
Yeah, it was different for me. Yeah. Once I'd had a bit more confidence in my ability to put a few shots together, um, at any time I thought someone was trying to mug me off. That was like my most used comment from the age of about 11 to 21 was, "Are you trying to mug me off?" So like whenever I felt that, I would it would be I would get into a fight and ask questions later.
Mm.
But look, I was just a kid from, I wasn't nothing special. Um, but I would always have a go.
Mm.
But I've not had a street fight since I was 21, which I'm really, really grateful about because the idea of getting into a street fight now scares the life out of me.
Oh God, yeah, it can go wrong for so many ways for both individuals involved, can't it?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
to be
Yeah.
honest, even even the ring, as we've discussed, as much as I used to love sparring in the boxing ring. I really enjoyed.
Did you? I hated it. Oh, I get so scared. I get so scared.
Yeah, well, I wondered. I had an ADHD assessment, and the guy said, "Did you ever engage in any risky behaviours?" And I was like, "It's just sort of boxing count as that?" And he was
Mm.
like, "Yeah," and I said, "Because I kind of liked getting hit. Like, I don't want to get knocked out, but there was something about." And he was like, "Oh, talk to me more about that." And I said, "Well, I don't know. It kind of made me feel alive, and I started asking this psychiatrist because the guys that do the diagnosis, they're psychiatrists, and I was asking him, "Is that like a form of self-harm that I like getting hit?" And he said, "Well, not typically, not traditionally, but he said I don't think we would put that in the same category as self-harm." But he said you probably just enjoyed the physicality of it, and it was just a channel to release energy. But um, I did used to
Did
like.
he? So this was it a therapist you said you was working with?
No, it's so if you go through the NHS to get like assessed for ADHD, you eventually for your when you go through all the sort of the hoops you have to jump through, the last point of call is you speak to a psychiatrist.
Ah,
We associate that word psychiatrist if you've properly lost it, and but they are the guys that they're the ones that have to diagnose any sort of I don't know. It's not a mental health disorder. It's a neural. Oh, come on, it's called now. But ADHD is, it's not a disorder. It's
is it? It's neuro. I think they call it neurodiversity, don't
divergent.
they?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they're the ones that diagnose it. Your GP can't diagnose it. It has to be a psychiatrist. So
So what was the link then? Like the psychiatrist. What did I think you said he, right? You did say it was a bloke
yeah, it
that
was a
you
guy.
referred.
Yeah.
Yeah. So did he make any like with the ADHD and the seeking like risky tasks? What's the link there then with ADHD?
Yeah, are you interested because you're thinking about you suspect whether you might be
Definitely. Look, I think I've definitely got some sort of ADD or something going on, and my son probably has as well. But I'm not sure. Although I've got a diagnosis of dyslexia now, I don't think it would have helped me because I might have used that as an excuse. So I don't think I'll go and get a diagnosis, but I'm definitely interested because I've definitely got those characteristics.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when you were talking earlier about your background, your past, it was in my head. I was thinking, oh, I wonder if he's ADHD. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So I mean, God, this is why it has a psychiatrist to diagnose it because it's a collection of characteristics. So you might have, one or two, but have you got the full set? But one of those is, did you get into a lot of fights when you're
All
young?
right.
Because some of my students will listen to this thinking, "What, John? You got into some fight? What? I didn't know this." But I mean, obviously, same as you. I haven't had a fight since I've been, I certainly haven't had one since I've been in my 30s and above. I mean, I'm in my 40s now, but I've same as you. I haven't had one for years. But yeah, it's if you find yourself getting into lots of fights, and it's all the classic stuff. You can't sit still, can't concentrate. You got terrible memory, always losing things. If things go on around me, I'm distracted. I can't get a lot of work done if I'm in a room with other people. I have to lock myself away. But then I can get hyper focused on things where if I like what I'm doing, I'm just and time can disappear because I'm into what I'm doing. And so you're nodding, so you
Mate,
probably
like
have.
there is so much there, yeah. Like because I said earlier about getting a first class in sport and exercise science, yeah. But yet when I was at school, I weren't. I mean, I weren't focused because I wasn't interested in it. But when I went to university, I was interested in all aspects of sport and exercise. So therefore, applying my attention to it, like I said, is I'm obsessive. If I like something, I am all in. Like I'm all or nothing. Do you know what I mean? Like I
Yeah,
am going
yeah,
to be all focused and all in. But if I'm not interested in it, I forget it.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
you said about
exactly.
bad memory.
Yeah.
Like if I'm interested in something, I will remember it. Yeah. But if I'm not, like it's like selective memory. Like it's as if it didn't even happen.
So are you obsessive to the point where after this podcast, you're going to go on Amazon and you're going to go and buy a book on ADHD and you're going to start Googling ADHD and reading all the articles?
Do you know what? Like I've listened to a few things on ADHD, and I've come to the point where I'm like, I probably have got it, but I
Yeah, like
don't
you
feel
said.
like I don't feel like I need a diagnosis with it. I feel like I've got to this part in my life, but I'm saying I might contradict myself, and then in a year's time, I'll go get a diagnosis. I'm a little bit like that, you know.
Yeah, but do you know what it was for me? Because when this is turned into an ADHD thing, isn't it? It's an interesting subject. But when I did an online test years ago, and it was like
Mm.
off the scale. So like, you definitely have it. And
Yeah.
and I rang my sister and I said, I've just done this online test, and it says that I'm absolutely got ADHD. I said, what do you reckon? She went, I thought you knew that. And I went, I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, well, of course you have. And I was like, are you being serious? And she went, yes. And I went, well, hold on, like, does everyone think this then? And she was like, well, yeah. And I was like, oh, right. I mean, yeah, okay, fine. Yeah, I know it makes sense upon reflection, but I didn't realize it was sort of the thing that everyone just accepted that John probably is ADHD. Um, and she said, well, look, why don't you, if you just want to know, why don't you go and get assessed and get tested? And then you can potentially, once you have that diagnosis, you can then explore it a bit more and go, right, so how do I need to navigate my world with
Mm.
those characteristics? And I think it does help for that. Just it means you can start figuring out what isn't good for you, what is good for you.
Do you know what? I can really see that, while you was talking, I see when I went for my dyslexia assessment about 6 or 7 years ago, um, like the lady that done my assessment, she said if I was in a room full of 100 people, I'd be in the bottom three with my reading, just because of how slow it is. But they do a number of other assessments to see your comprehension around topics to ascertain if you understand the topics, but it's just literally the reading of it that's slow.
Mm.
Um, so she said I'd be in the bottom three with my reading. And interestingly, since the diagnosis, whenever I've done any tests or assessments or anything like that over since the diagnosis, have just by getting say 20 or 30 minutes extra in a test or whatever, it has actually helped and it's actually taken some of the pressure off. So maybe an assessment might be useful in ADHD.
Yeah, well, because the psychiatrist as well, he just said, straight away, he's like, right, I'm writing you a letter for your employer. I'm writing you a letter for
Mm.
any education establishment you might want to return to one day. He's like, you don't have to use them, but I'm giving them to you. I don't actually want them at the moment. I don't. Maybe I will use them one day. I don't know, but I don't want to go. There you go. Does that get me out of whatever? Um, but
Oh, mate, I really relate to that.
no, I don't. Yeah, I don't want to.
Mm.
I don't have allowances for things.
Yeah.
But what? It's quite nice can you hear that? It's the
No,
bell.
I didn't.
Oh,
I
sorry,
didn't
it's the
hear
bell
it.
going. It's probably Amazon delivery. But yeah, I don't. I like the idea that there's someone that's understanding that my brain's wired differently, and if you're trying to progress and do okay in life, there's certain things you're going to be really good at and certain things you're going to struggle with, and so I kind of like just knowing that and not feeling like I'm just broken or do you know what I mean?
I really do. Like you're talking about getting distracted. All I can think about is your Amazon delivery and what you ordered.
I'll tell you, it's actually a man. This is going to go off in so many directions. It's actually a nature cam for my garden, so I can
Oh, right. Oh,
capture footage
cool.
of nature in my garden.
Like badges and things like that.
Yeah, well, a badger would be awesome. I've never seen a badger in the garden, but if I get one of those, I'll be over the moon.
Oh, wow. Oh,
But I
that's
ha
really cool.
yeah, it's just stuff like that. I did see an adder in the garden once. I'm hoping to get a little sneaky video of that. But
Oh, wow. How big was it?
yeah, it was quite big. It's the first one I've seen in my life. I've never seen it.
Yeah, because I know they are over here, but I've never seen one either.
Yeah, yeah. I was like, oh my God. And my son was in the garden as well. And I went,
Wow, and your son got to see it.
he didn't see it. He was behind me. And I went, oh my
Ah,
God, Jaden, I think I said it's a snake. And it wasn't until I Googled it, I was like, oh, it's an adder. Because I saw the pattern. It's
yeah.
very distinctive. Um,
Yeah,
so
my son would love that as well because my son's and my daughter. I've got a 1 year old daughter and an 8 year old son. My daughter just gets obsessed with animals. Like anytime she sees a bird, she's like screaming and like getting so excited. But my son, like he really likes snakes and things like that because we was in Italy last year and a snake like slithered across the path we were walking. And I
yeah,
know he'd be absolutely he would love that to see an
yeah, it's
adder
great.
in the garden.
Yeah, really good. I mean, even something as simple as we've seen rabbits and we've seen foxes and things like that. So, but just seeing them in when no one else is around and up close on the camera would be great. But
Yeah. So that's the delivery done.
that's the delivery. Right, we'll park that now. We'll do a separate one on nature.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so yeah, so we were talking about exercise and how you said you haven't really gotten into it until the sort of 2022, did you say?
Yeah. Yeah, 2022. So that's when I really started to form consistency. And that's what really just like um in that propelled me, I suppose, to try and get that message over to my clients even more. So last year I've done a professional certificate in executive coaching because coaching is like coaching for behavior change. That is ultimately what we should be achieving. I say we as in the health and fitness profession. That's what we should be trying to achieve, right? A behavior change, because otherwise we're just putting a plaster over the problem. The idea for me, I needed to create an environment in which a behavior change was, if not created, but slowly working towards, yeah. And what done it for me was when I got injured in my last fight as a boxer in 2017. I got a post-concussion syndrome, vertigo, and tinnitus just as a result of my boxing style. My boxing style wasn't boxing, it was fighting. I'd get in there and have a scrap and
Yeah,
take loads of punches. So, and there is a point to the story, I promise. Like when when I got injured, I was faced with like a very the very real situation that I could no longer box. And that was a massive part of my identity. I didn't realize that I'd been using it as a crutch. So anytime life got challenging or I was stressed or I'd put on weight, it would be like, oh, let's get a fight. I'd have a fight, lose loads of weight, start feeling healthy. I'd have to fight, then I'd put all the weight back on. And that was pretty much how I dealt with life, right? Life got stressful, I'd get in the ring, and my only chance of peace of mind would be if I was in a boxing ring. Because it's really hard to be thinking about anything else when you've got someone in front of you trying to
yeah,
punch you. Do you know what I mean? So then at that point, in 2017, it was like, well, I put weight on and I was really, and it wasn't like overnight, like it was progressive, right? I'd have a whole tub of ice cream once a week, and then once a week would turn into twice a week. And before I know it, like 5 years later, my visceral fat was 28. No, my visceral fat was 13. My body fat percentage was 28. My muscle mass was low. Like I was struggling to run around as a health and fitness professional. I turn up to work to deliver because I run a boot camp. Another part of my business is I run a boot camp in Greenwich Park. And I turn up to deliver boot camp sessions with like love handles and like fat hanging over my trousers, and just felt so inauthentic as a fitness professional. So then April, I know exactly when it was because I've done a video and posted it to my members. April 2022, it just reached a point. I looked in the mirror, I stepped on the scales, and I didn't hide away from it. I looked at the data and I didn't try and make excuses. I took responsibility back to like when I was 21, right? Like it was like fast forward a few years and then I'm doing the same thing but for my health instead of taking drugs. Um, so My visceral fat was, I was in the at-risk category. My body fat percentage was far too high for someone who was in their 30s and so-called health professional. So my goal changed. My goal changed from training and eating and under eating to make weight for a fight to training for my health so I could actually live longer and actually be a responsible parent and like owner of a fitness company. So then that's been that's been the pillar of my life really. Excuse me. Like developing consistent fitness habits in order for me to be healthy, strong, and a role model for the people that are around me.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, because the behavior thing, when I teach webinars on PT, I've said numerous times to my students that I don't think the training methods and the training systems are going to develop that much in the next sort of 10, 20 years because they haven't done in the last 10 or 20 years, particularly. All the training methods and systems sort of tend to work if we stick to them, if we stay consistent with them. And so that's not really the problem, is inventing more training systems and methods. The problem is getting people to adhere to them. That's where the problem is. And that is, yes, we can change our environment, etc., but it's psychology, really. So I think the progress or the development of the personal trainer is exactly what you said. It's going to be actually becoming behavior change coaches and looking at bringing all the different psychological models that are out there and applying the right one to the right client. So we'll become almost like fitness psychologists rather than personal trainers. But it does depend on who your target market is and what your business is, because there's plenty of people out there, they qualify as a trainer and they fall in love with Olympic lifting. And all they want to do is coach people Olympic lifting. So there's an argument. If you're the Olympic lifting guy, there's an argument to say, well, do you need to be in great shape or do you need to worry about all that other stuff because you're just teaching the Olympic lifts? But for you and what you do and the direction you're going and the passion that you have, sounds like it's very much about, yeah, let's realign your behaviors that set you up for success, basically.
Definitely, because well, I notice a pattern with myself, and that's why the current state of the health of the Western world is like terrible because I'm not the only one who suffers with this. But if life is a bit stressful, I know I reach for food. I could reach for anything if I think it's going to make me feel better. But nowadays it's normally food, and if life was getting stressful, what I would do is I would overeat, I would overconsume. And it might not be necessarily unhealthy food, but it might be I'll have a second helping of dinner. And so I'm having a whole nother set of dinner that might be an extra 700 or 800 calories. And then if you do that long enough, you're going to start putting on weight. It doesn't matter if it's good food or bad food. Bad as in quotes, you know what I mean? But yeah,
Yeah.
so what my point to that
By the
is,
way, Ryan, that is, sorry for smiling, but that is another ADHD thing. That's another
is it? Is it?
strongly consistent with ADHD. Yeah.
Is it?
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, overeating and addiction. You're something like 10 times more likely
Really?
to be
Nice.
an addict if you're ADHD. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So
carry
it
on.
looks. Yeah. Yeah. But what my point is I think a lot of people like food addiction is one of the most easy to get by with, right? Because I mean, you can be addicted to food and you can still get on and go to work. You can still drive. You can still, but you might have a food addiction. So, which means every time you feel stressed or even you feel happy, you want to celebrate. Oh, let's go and eat. I know that because sometimes I feel the tendency to do that with myself.
Mm.
Um, and I think not everyone. I'm not saying everyone does that, but I think it is quite a common trait.
Very, very common. Yeah. It's very socially acceptable. It's one of the
Absolutely.
aspects of helping behavior change is looking at people's subjective norms. And
Mm,
if you're in an environment where it's okay to eat certain foods or it's okay to eat that often, etc., you're much more likely to do it. And you think about a lot of the drug taking. So, like, you can definitely argue that when you were taking cocaine, that's the subjective norm of that is a lot less than eating processed food, because less people will have cocaine than people that consume processed food.
Mm,
And that's not to minimize anyone who's addicted to cocaine, because an addiction is an addiction.
mm,
But it's kind of easier to surround yourself with people that don't do cocaine than it is to surround yourself with people that don't have processed food or eat regularly, because everyone does. Everyone
mm.
does.
You're actually you're in the minority, right? That's why suggesting a diet that doesn't involve processed foods is so extreme, because it is everywhere. It makes up majority of people's diet
Mm.
is processed foods. I know I try and limit the amount of processed foods I have these days, but I do enjoy it.
Yeah, and that's the thing to remember as well, is that people, we are tribal. We are like, we love
Mm,
being accepted and part of a tribe. And every time you choose to do something against the grain or challenges the status quo, is a bit different. You do isolate yourself somewhat, or you certainly feel like you're isolating yourself. So if you are, trying to be good, like, I don't know if you've ever had this, but I remember when I used to work, I was working for a training company, training as in like an education company.
mm, mm.
And every day in the office around lunchtime, the whole office would be like, "Oh, what's he got in his lunch today, Mr. Healthy?"
Mm,
And I would, and I should have flipped it and taken it as a compliment, but I'd actually feel a bit like, "Oh, leave me alone," because it kind of
mm.
made me feel a bit weird, because I was always eating like a salad and good food. I never had any processed, and they had their bag of crisps, their chocolate bar, and their sandwich and their Coke. And it was weird that I felt like the weird one because I was opting to not have that. But that's how it works with tribes, isn't it? If you do something different to everyone else, you don't feel as part of the tribe.
100%. It's the same thing with drink, isn't it?
Mm,
Like, it's such a normalized part of our culture that if you
yeah,
go to the pub and you're not drinking, it's, oh, why are you not drinking? It's like, do you know, and it's part, it's one of those ones where it's like you then got to make an excuse as to the reason why you're not having a drink, if like
yeah,
if you're around people that are uncomfortable with their own drinking. Like, it's, yeah, it's an interesting one, like where you might be doing something that's trying to improve yourself. That's why like, you're the sum total of the five people you spend the most time with, right? Like,
yeah,
so that's why I do try and, so I do try and like surround myself with people that are encouraging me to be better, not and not belittling me if I'm trying to make decisions that are about self-development. Do you know what I mean?
yeah. No, you're right. That five been you're an average of your five closest friends. It's so true, isn't it? I mean,
Mm,
if you had it doesn't whoever you spend a considerable amount of time with, they are eventually going to rub off on you and vice versa.
mm,
You have to be quite
mm.
careful who you choose to associate with. I know you can't control everyone you associate with, but you can try a little bit. That's why I keep trying to hang out with the Dalai Lama, but he never returns my calls.
Oh, you're much more spiritual than me, mate. My mind went to like Jordan Belfort or these guys that have got loads of money. Like,
Wolf of Wall Street.
yeah,
No, we,
exactly.
we definitely don't want to be hanging out with
No,
that
yeah, I was only joking.
guy. We'd be in this. We'd be the sequel would be about me and you if that was the case.
Yeah,
They'd be like,
yeah,
have you seen the first movie? The second movie, it's even crazier.
Yeah,
That's so funny. Um, so 2022, that was the time you're like, you took responsibility. I love that whole taking responsibility. That, where did you learn that, by the way? Because that's not typical. People are often, they find themselves in circumstances and they'll go, whose fault is this? Because it's not mine. And then
Mm,
I mean, I can do that. I can look for someone else to blame, especially with food. I'll blame my wife for buying the stuff for the kids. So I came down this morning. There was a plate of cookies, and I was like, oh, for goodness sake! And I got the Tupperware box out, and I shoved them in this Tupperware box, and I put them inside a metal tin. I hid them in the boot room out the back. And they'll come home later, and they'll be like, "Where are those cookies? You haven't eaten them all, have you?" I'm like, no, I've hidden them away. So
yeah.
a little rant then, didn't I?
No, but I think it's do you know, because pre 2022, I didn't have the discipline to walk past a plate of cookies and not have one. And the problem is, if I have one, I'm going to finish the plate. Like there ain't an off switch. Do you know what I mean? Like so that's exactly what I need to do. Like with those sorts of things. Well, that's what I tend to do. Like out of sight, out of mind. Like so our like we've got like crisps in the cupboard and we have like nut bars which are like not as bad as a chocolate bar but still processed foods. Do you know what I mean? So those types of foods we put them out of the way because I mean I do operate with a much higher level of discipline than I used to have, but there's no point tempting fate.
No, no. And when you say discipline, so that word to you, discipline,
Mm.
do you link that with willpower? Do you link that with I'm disciplined because I say no more, or I say no to the bad choices and I say yes to the good choices more? Is that how you see discipline?
Oh, really glad that we got here because I've had a massive shift in my thinking about discipline and motivation. I was one of those guys. I mean, I've got a podcast called Be More Motivated, right? I've not done an episode for a few years, but that's how invested I was in the idea of motivation. I just thought we just need a society of people that are more motivated to stay on track with their health and fitness.
Mm,
But actually, it's not a motivation problem; it's a discipline problem because I can't guarantee that I'm always going to be motivated because motivation is like on a scale, right? It goes up and down.
mm.
But what I can do is ensure that I'm disciplined 80% of the time. So discipline for me, it comes down to the reason why. So why is the reason I'm trying to say no to the extra slice of cake or the extra packet of crisps or the extra nut bar, or whatever it is? Do you know what I mean? Well, the reason for me is because I I want to be a good example for my clients. I want to be a good example for my son. Like when my son started noticing the change in my physique and he started saying, "Oh, let me see your muscles, daddy."
Mhm.
Like when he started, it gave me a massive boost because I want him to be able to look at me and be proud of of his dad and be proud because now it's like a competition. We went on holiday for a week, so I've put on a bit of fat. So my abs aren't as visible as what they were. So my son saw my abs the other day, or like they're just about visible, and he was like, "Oh, I can't really see your abs anymore, Daddy." Like, so it's like, but it's those types of things. He's like, when he could see a few weeks ago that my abs were like more defined, he was like, "Oh, that's the best I've ever seen your abs." Like, it's that those sorts of things are what give me the discipline
Yeah, yeah.
to walk past that plate of cookies as opposed to going in for the first one because the first one does the damage.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. They were good ones too. They had little Cadbury's mini eggs,
Oh,
like
oh,
inside the cookie.
oh,
They were homemade, but anyway,
oh.
let's not go there. I'm salivating.
No, do you know what? I just I like went in a time machine. Biscoff was my like it was my Achilles heel. Yeah, we'd have like a Biscoff spread in the cupboard, and I would get home from work at like 8 o'clock at night, and I'd just go and get the tub of Biscoff out, and sit there with a spoon, and just be spooning Biscoff in like
Yeah,
that. Like, and I think it's like insane.
but who invents such a thing? Like, that person should just be. They should bring back the death penalty just for. Like, what are
Yeah.
that? It's an awful thing to do to us. Invent something like that we just have to spend our whole lives trying to
Yeah.
exercise willpower and denying ourselves of it.
Yeah,
That's the problem.
exactly.
It must have been so easy back in the day, like like I don't know, when we were pre sort of Paleolithic era, where we're just walking around and someone goes, "Oh, I really want a plate of cookies," and everyone's like, "What cookies?" Uh, I haven't
Yeah,
been
yeah.
invented yet. Like you wouldn't.
Or a slice of bread.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, ignorance would have been bliss. If you went like, I really feel like emotionally eating today, and binging on something, you'd have to work so bloody hard that you'd actually go, do you know what? Should we just not bother? Find something
Should
else
we
to do
just
instead
watch
of
the
eating.
fire instead?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they say that with fire as well. Here we go. Cue the next tangent. Um,
Yeah,
when you stare at your phone, it kind of mimics the sort of the primitive of staring into the fire, staring into the light. It's another
yeah.
thing that obviously there's lots of reasons we're addicted to them, but that's one of them.
Well, like talking about staring at fire. So when I was in the army, one of the best things when we would go on exercise, just go on, you might go on like a 2 or 3 week exercise out in the field somewhere. and just practicing like battlefield drills, like section attacks, those types of things. But when you have a bit of downtime, we used to call it hexy TV because you get these like little hexy squares that you use to light and then cook with. So what you do is you just create it. You'd all sit round this fire, and you could put the TV on, which was these little hexy blocks. You'd set them alight, and you'd just be watching the fire, and you'd just be chatting. And those moments at the time, there's a line. Yeah, I don't know if you like The Office, but there's a
Yeah.
line in the American Office. I won't go down this tangent, but I love the British Office, but I also like the American Office now as well. But one of the characters in there, Andy, he says a line. He says, "I wish you knew you was in the good old days when you was living in them." And that's one of those moments of my life where I look back at those precious moments of staring at that fire around loads of my mates, just chatting, talking about the food that you're going to eat when you get off exercise, talking about the people you're going to go and see, and just those moments where I wish I'd have known that those moments were the ones that I'm going to remember the most at the time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh man, that's good. Yeah, I like that. I haven't seen the American Office, so I need to. I've done the English one. I have to check that out. Um, what you were saying there remind me. My son, so my son loves gaming.
Mm,
He just as soon as he gets home from school, as soon as he wakes up, it's the first thing that goes on. Um, but if I say to him, if I shout the stairs, Jaden, I've just got a fire pit going. Do you want to come down and enjoy it in the garden? That headset. Sorry, guys. My dad's calling me. I got to go. Yeah, he'll come off the Xbox straight away for that. Straight downstairs.
that's really good. You know, I need to do that. I need to do that because I know my son would do the same.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. We just sit
Mm,
there and also eat like blankets, staring into the fire. The other night we made jacket potatoes in there, so we wrapped. I got jacket potatoes, rubbed oil around them, olive oil, wrapped them in foil, and we just threw them into the fire pit, and
nice.
we did jacket potatoes in there, and they're really nice. And it was just those simple things that sometimes we think that it's too late. The kids are all addicted to their phones and their Xboxes now, but you can still pull them away from it with some of that really cool stuff, that primitive stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it's about fine. Like that's what I think. Of course, motocross isn't primitive because they weren't riding around on motocross bikes, but it does tap into the primitive aspect of us because it's so like you're balancing on the knife edge of like safety and risk, right? When you're on a motocross track,
Mm,
doing jumps, taking corners fast, and all that. But once my son's been doing it for a couple of years now, and he's 8. Um, so what I have noticed though is a massive development in his resilience.
mm,
Like he's so much more resilient than he used to be. And that's one of those tasks that just whenever like he'll be out the house all day, so we'll leave early in the morning. We'll be out all day. Won't be thinking about going on his games. He'll just completely immersed in the present moment in the activity of riding his motocross bike. And it's those sorts of things that really trying to harness. Do you know what I mean? To keep him like still tapped into being outside.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's awesome, isn't it? Because you're right. It's outdoors, which is just great anyway, and
Mm,
that you can't think about anything else. He's probably that. They talk about the flow state where you're just completely present in what you're doing and time
yeah,
disappears. He's probably
yeah,
definitely in that flow state, isn't he, when he's on that bike?
yeah, 100%. Yeah, you can't not be like I know because I ride as well, and you can't. It's like being in a boxing ring, right?
Mm,
Although I mean it's a lot less. The aim of it isn't to fall off, right? Although it does happen, but the aim of boxing is to punch, and you're going to get punched. But so it's a bit different in that sense. But you have to be completely immersed in the present moment.
mm,
And when you are immersed in the present moment, and everything does go, even though you're going fast, as soon as you hit a jump, everything just slows down. It goes like it's almost like I just heard it in my ears. It's like you go whoa, like everything, even though you're in the air and of course you're flying,
mm.
everything just like you just become more aware of like the colors and the feeling and everything. And then when you land, it's like like someone's pressed slow motion So
Yeah.
like you're in the air and it's like, whoa, and then when the wheels touch the floor again, it's like, ah, like you're off again.
Oh
Do you know what I
wow,
mean?
that sounds amazing.
Yeah, yeah,
Jeez.
it's awesome. Yeah,
That's so good. I haven't really done those sorts of sports or activities other than I've been skiing and I've been snowboarding, and that is similar from the point, you're rushing, you're moving along
mm,
very quickly, you see the ground rushing past,
mm,
you're getting that buzz, the adrenaline, you're outdoors, and that there isn't too many feelings like that, is there? It is fantastic.
yeah. Yeah, I used to skateboard as well as a kid, so I got right into skateboarding, another one of my obsessions. And my son wanted to do some skateboarding a few years ago, so I went and bought a skateboard again, and I could still skate a little bit. So, but when you get older, it really hurts when you fall over. So I didn't do it for that long.
Yeah. God, yeah. I had I don't know if it was a midlife crisis or what really, but when I was how old was I? It was a few years ago I bought a skateboard and
Yeah.
I started skating and you just I feel like I was just too old. I was too worried about coming off that I couldn't
Mm,
relax and loosen up. I persevered
mm.
with it for quite a long time, but when I was younger, I mean, my mum was always taking me to A&E because I'd fall out a tree, fall off
Yeah.
my skateboard, fall. There was always something, and so much so that I think I wouldn't be surprised if I was on some sort of list where they were a bit concerned, like if this
Yeah.
woman brings him in one more
Yeah.
time, I think we're going to have to send social services around there because I was just always getting hurt. But now I'm older and I'm like, I've got a family, I've got a business, a job. There's things that are important to me now, and I'm a bit more switched on and sensible to that sort of thing that I just couldn't relax. So I got rid of it, and I no longer skate.
Yeah, I stopped skating as well. I still thought I was 15, and I was like dropping in on half pipe. Don't get me wrong, I was still doing it, but there this one fall where I dropped in on this like it was like a bowl, and it was concrete, and I just hit the floor and slapped the floor and like proper bruised my hip, and I was like, oh, I can't do that.
You
It's
don't bounce
the
back up like you used to, do you?
you don't know you hit the floor and you stay down.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
don't-
Yeah,
yeah.
you check, don't you? Check things. You go, all right,
Yeah,
that seems nothing sticking out there, nothing sticking
yeah,
out.
yeah. That's exactly
Uh,
right. Yeah.
I mean, God, so just to be clear, I was crap. So I wasn't doing any of what you just said. I couldn't go down. God, there's no way I would have gone down one of those. What'd you call it?
A half pipe or a bowl.
Half pub or a bowl. Yeah, I'm talking about just going along roads, pavements and roads and stuff. But um, look, Ryan, could remind me again, how long do you have? Oh,
Half,
oh,
and
wow.
I've
Seen the
how
time.
long we've been talking?
Hour and 10.
Wow. Oh, that's flown by,
That
hasn't
has
it?
flown by. Well, I'll tell you what, is there a question that I haven't asked you that you would like me to ask you? But that's a question never been asked before, isn't it? I've just thrown it
So,
at you. What would you like me to ask you? But
it's one of those, this is indulging a part of my personality that I try and step away from, which is like the self-indulgent part of my
yeah,
personality. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
But if I'm going to indulge that for a second, so I suppose the only question that I can think of, but I've already answered it really, was like, it's related. It's related to the answer that I don't know how I would ask the question, but the answer that I would want to talk about would be um, taking responsibility, dealing with your resentments, and placing yourself in a position to be of service. So I suppose what's the question? The question is how to um, how would you how would you explain to someone? So how would you explain to someone to to find their purpose and live a fulfilled life? Like for me, the answer to that question would be um, deal with your resentments, take responsibility for yourself and your own actions. So essentially, keep your side of the street clean. and place yourself in a position to be of service to others. Like if your job doesn't revolve around that, that's not a problem. Like if you've got a job that you don't necessarily like, I know loads of people that don't necessarily like their job and it's not necessarily a passion, but it brings in a lot of money. There's nothing to say that you can't do that stuff in your spare time and still get a purpose and fulfillment in your life. Because I think there's so much talk around find your passion and you'll never work another day in your life and all that, which I agree with. I think of course that's true. But sometimes that's not possible for someone. They've got responsibilities, they've got commitments, they need to support their family, whatever. So, but there's nothing to say you can't find opportunities to do that when you're not working. So that's what I would say. If you're on a hunt for having a life that is one of fulfillment and purpose and ultimately joy, then those three things, I believe, are the ingredients to get there.
Yeah, that's great. I like that. What you just said there about the purpose thing, I agree with completely, by the way. So I think that find something you love doing, you never work in your day in your life. I've heard that. I heard Chris Evans say that. I've heard Paul McKenna say that. And elements of what they're saying I agree with, because I do very much enjoy what I do as for a profession, a career. I get a lot of reward from it. I don't ever dread it. You know, but it's still work. It is still work. And sometimes, you know, I have a lovely weekend with the kids and the wife. And on a Monday morning when they go off to school and she goes off to doing what she does, she's a nurse, I get a bit like, oh, can't we all stay at home and have another day like we had yesterday? You know, I don't want to do work today. I want to stay with you guys because my only passion is not just health and fitness. I have more than one passion. I have other passions too. So I think, first of all, anyone listening, I think you can have more than one passion, and your work doesn't necessarily have to follow one passion. It could follow another. It could tap into a few of those. But I think also, I don't think, like random person, but Ashton Kutcher, I heard years ago once, stumbled upon a video on YouTube say, never to be too proud to have a job. Whatever it is you're doing, never be too proud to have a job. Because if you are a dad like we are, there's something very admirable and very rewarding about just putting food on the table, isn't there? So however you're doing that, it's still coming home and feeding the family and, you know, keeping them in the good graces of the Lord is a reward in itself, isn't it? So
100%. Yeah, I really agree.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Ryan. What I was going to ask the last question actually was just how can people find you if they want to sniff you out?
Yeah, on Instagram it's Ryan French _ hitting targets. I've got a YouTube channel which is Ryan French Lifestyle, and you can find me on TikTok, which is Ryan French hitting targets, and Facebook, just search my name, Ryan French, and you'll see a picture of me looking stoic.
Brilliant. Actually, ping me those as well if you don't mind. Ping me those over. I'll stick them in the notes and stuff as well. So
yeah, we'll do.
Click on them. But brilliant. Well, thank you, Ryan. Really enjoyed that. It was a good little chin wag, wasn't it?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, mate. Thanks a lot for having me on. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you and getting to know you a little bit more as well.
Yeah, you too, mate. Now, if you enjoyed today's episode, something you can do for me is subscribe to my show. And if you know anyone else that might be interested in this content, then please share it with them too. You can also head over to our socials and follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook and YouTube. But if you're ready to take that next step, visit our website, www.stormfitnessacademy.co.uk, fill out a contact form, that'll come straight to me. I will contact you shortly afterwards, and I look forward to speaking to you then.